Okay, so today we're covering exam 2, group E, module E1. There's only one module in group E, so it's on certification requirements for diverse suppliers. It's from the 2022 CPSD version. So the task is to determine and develop diverse supplier certification requirements. So each organization is going to have to determine how they're going to do this and what are the criteria for your organization to consider them a diverse supplier. So supplier certifications, there's two types. One is to confirm the diverse status, is what we're talking about, and the other is to confirm capability, just basically be an approved supplier. Diverse supplier certification. So confirming the supplier meets some criteria for a disadvantaged class, and whatever disadvantaged classes you're trying to work with is up to the organization. So the organization must first clearly define what a diverse supplier is. And you can use some of the government definitions, some of the other organizational definitions that we've discussed, NMSDC and some of these others that have put some thought into it, or you can make up your own. So many government entities have working definitions. It may be too broad for you, it may be too narrow, you just have to take a look at it, but they can be adapted to private industry. So for the government specifies criteria for a diverse supplier through the Small Business Administration. Criteria published on the SBA website and in the Code of Federal Regulations and the Federal Acquisition Regulations, which is based on the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations. So the Small Business Association certifies organizations under the following program: Business Development, Small Disadvantaged Business Program, SDB, or Historically Underutilized Business Zone, or a hub zone. Those three programs. So Small Disadvantaged Business Program, part of from the SBA. Also look at women-owned small businesses, the hub zones, and small service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So the Department of Veterans Affairs has its own certification program called Vets First. There's also Native American, LBGQ, rural businesses, minority-owned businesses, all that stuff. Small businesses and small disadvantaged business requirements. So the Federal Acquisition Streamlining Act of 1994 establishes a 5% government-wide agency goal for small disadvantaged businesses and 5% for women-owned businesses. So depending on the industry, the qualification for being considered a small business through the SBA is based on either the number of employees or the average annual receipts. And this is from the Small Business Administration website here. So it'll talk about how they calculate it, and it's based on the industry. A small business is a small disadvantaged business is at least 15% owned and controlled by an individual who is categorized as socially and economically disadvantaged by the federal government. Small business is considered if its size is consistent with the government standards found in the Federal Acquisition Regulations 19.102. So depending on the industry, number of employees or average annual receipts. So in manufacturing, a small business is 500 employees or less. For industries like transportation, agriculture, and construction, it's 500,000 to 100 million average annual revenue is a small business. So below 100 million is a small business. Usually 100 million to $1 billion is a medium-sized business, and above $1 billion is a large business. So small business disadvantaged, or the SDB, qualifies as a small business above is at least 51% owned and controlled by an individual who is categorized as socially and economically disadvantaged. And the owner's net worth, excluding their equity in the business, cannot exceed $750,000. And 30% equity ownership, but 51% ownership of the voting stock. So sources of information, the SBA has a computerized directory of these businesses. It's part of the SAM system for awards management, federal government system, through supplemental pages known as the DSBS. The most widely used minority business directory is Diversity Information Resources, or the DIR, which here's the website to it. And it's one of those ones you got to pay for, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And business.com contains an international directory of more than 65,000 business categories. And the Office of Government Contracting at the SBA also works to increase participation by small businesses. So the System for Award Management, or otherwise known as SAM, as in Uncle Sam. SAM replaced the CCR in 2012. And certification system for award management companies register for federal government contracting, primary registered database for the federal government. So all the federal government uses this same system. The USFCR is a one-stop shop for organizing. So if you need help, you can pay these guys to organize your SAM registrations. And the Federal Acquisition Reg states that all prospective vendors, if you want to do business with the government, you got to be registered in SAM. And once registered in SAM, a business can fill out Small Business Association supplemental pages, known as the Dynamic Small Business Search, DSBS, to give the business access to federal contracting opportunities for small businesses, if you qualify. The Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, the OSDBU, which is part of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, manages the implementation and appropriate outreach programs. So this is their website here. And the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, DHHS, has several outreach activities for small businesses. The USFCR vendor seal is presented to vendors after a USR case manager has completed their SAM registration or renewal. So this goes back to USFCR. These guys here. You have to pay them, but they'll get you registered through SAM. The seal signifies to contracting officers and other agencies of the federal government that the vendor's registration is complete and free of errors, which is what you pay these guys. So private supplier diversity definitions. So the NMSDC has a definition that you can use, you can work with. The WBENC also has a definition you can work with. LBGT has a definition. The veterans have their definitions, and the Minority Business Development Agency has a definition. And these disability N guys and these certified corporate B guys also have definitions. You can cut and paste from all these, or you can use one. Just depends on what you want to do. Third-party certification organization. So if I was running my organization, I would use a third-party certification. I would not certify myself because that's just a pain in the neck, and I usually don't have people to do that. I would use one of these organizations. Once they certify them, I'd call them good. So an organization must establish its own criteria and certifying bodies. So the NMSDC will certify, WNBEC will decertify, the LGBT Chamber of Commerce will certify, other government and state agencies will also certify. So, and then what they're certifying is that it's a diverse supplier. Supplier certification. Once the organization has defined a diverse supplier, the next step is to decide on the steps necessary for meeting the criteria. So you have to determine what is a diverse supplier to your organization, and then you have to come up with how are they going to qualify. Many organizations include their diverse suppliers in their general supplier certification programs. So this goes back to there's two certifications for a diverse supplier. There's whether or not they're a diverse supplier to begin with, and then there's the whether they're an approved supplier to do business with for that organization. So this type of certification tells the buyer if the supplier has the general capacity to meet their needs. So what they're talking about here is they run them into their general supplier certifications. Are they an approved supplier for the organization? And then they have another add-on that says, are they also a diverse supplier? Certification can be given at the organizational level or the parts level or both. So if suppliers are certified by part by part, then the buying organization is aware of the capabilities of the supplier. But that is very tedious, and most organizations are not going to do it that way. They're going to certify them by supplier. When it comes to diverse suppliers, certification standards have traditionally been set by the government or a third-party agency, which is, these guys here. In case of self-certification or even in-house certifications, the presumption is that the companies follow common terms or standards already in place. So you basically use somebody else's system and adapt it to your organization. Buying organizations should implement their own review and verification programs. I would not do that. I would use one of these guys here or a combination. I would say if these guys certify them as diverse, I'm going to certify them as diverse. In order to verify our organization's diversity for certification, suppliers will need to provide proof of diversity claims through documents such as certificates of incorporation, ownership agreements, proof of U.S. citizenship, business card, banking record, sales reports. And see, if you use third-party certifications, then you don't have to mess with all that. The NMSDC messes with all that. Level of rigor. Certification programs through national and federal agencies have detailed instructions and evaluation programs to ensure specific standards are upheld and that suppliers meet qualifications. Third parties typically have similar processes to ensure proper verification and uphold the quality of their certifications. So for buying organizations conducting their own internal certification process, and I would not recommend that unless you're a very large corporation, a full-scale, rigorous program may not always be achievable. Start by asking suppliers basic information through surveys, follow up by asking for verifying information, such as third-party certifications and articles of ownership, and evaluate not only your primary suppliers, but also look for diversity in your second and third tier suppliers. Or what I would do is make the primary suppliers have a program where they're looking at their tier one suppliers, which would be your tier two. Self-certification versus third party. So third-party certs, once certified, recertification may be required on a regular basis with a third party, and mentorship training and resource benefits come with membership in the organization, like the NMSDC. If you're doing self-certification, the supplier chooses to forego third-party certs, but classifies themselves as a diverse supplier. Okay, it's like saying your food is organic. Anybody can say it. What can you prove? Some buying organizations may be leery of self-certifications or even new diversity classifications, and competitors may challenge the validity of the supplier's self-certification. So in-house certifications, as opposed to self-certifications where the supplier is certifying itself, in-house is the organization you're working for has its own certification process. So certification is an ideal option for buying organizations who prefer to utilize criteria more closely aligned with their own values, and the existing supply base is diverse in ways other than standards common in the marketplace. And you've got a pretty good size organization because it's going to take some money and people to do that. Establishing a unique in-house certification program provides the organization with structure and level of rigidity to match corporate values and confidence in the quality of the data. And then you got to determine, are you going to have a recertification? Is certification only good for 3 years or is it good for forever? Organization may also consider a hybrid program where some definitions and certifications are adapted from government or third-party certs, and the remaining diversity qualifications are established by the organization. That's a little more doable. And finally, the organization must decide how, when, and or whether to collect either proof of third-party certs or information to review and verify the supplier's self-certification. All right, to do business with the U.S. government and have them certify the business as a small disadvantaged business or an SDB, a business owner must register with whom? The small disadvantaged business register? That just sounds like a nonsense answer that doesn't exist. The hub zone, that is an actual organization, but it's not a registrar. Federal acquisition regulation, it's a regulation, it's not a register. And the system for award management, or SAM. That's the one there, D. All right, D it is. And what is the best method to validate that a supplier is an adverse supplier? Take supplier's word for it? No, never. Ask supplier to show ownership status, determine its status. Maybe that's tedious. Require a copy of the certification document by a recognized third party. That would be my choice. Require submission of W-9 tax ID form. Let's go with C. C it is. All right. Let's look at the summary. Self-certifications are often based on honor system where business classifies itself as diverse without any proof. Suppliers seeking to be certified as diverse from a third party will need to understand and meet that party's definition. Establishing an in-house certification is a good option for organizations who want their certification to align with their own values. And cert standard certification is accomplished by setting guidelines for uniform standards. This is what ISO does. And the SBA, Small Business Administration, uses the table of standard sizes matched with the firm's NAICS code to determine if this is a small business. Women-owned business is business owned and operated by at least 51% women, and minority-owned is 51%. So 51% is always the number here. Veteran-owned, 51%. Served in full-time active duty or the U.S. Armed Services. LGBT is also 51%. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and buying power, the amount of goods or services that an organization can purchase. References. All right. Questions we've got to do. We'll find some questions here. Damn, 2 questions. We are on E1. There's only one module in E. And it has got 9, 10 questions. So go ahead and do all 10. Then the answers are in the answer file under E1 answers to practice questions. All right. That is about it for today. Tomorrow we'll start with F1. Thanks.